Okay, I know what you're thinking. Yes, this is real and this is a gaming mouse. Now, why am I showing you this? Because a vertical mouse is in theory a superior design over a traditional gaming mouse. But the selection of vertical gaming mice aren't exactly great. But can the Razer ProClick V2 Vertical actually be a good mouse for competitive gaming? Well, I've been grinding with this for too long now. It felt like an eternity. And I can confidently say that this is really good and bad. It's hard to explain. This isn't my first experience with vertical gaming mice. I used a Trust GXT 144 Rex, which sounds like a motorbike, a few years ago. It was pretty decent, but the narrow base meant that it would tilt when doing large sweeping movements, and it felt pretty cheap. But it was cheap. Now this is a more premium and high performance experience with a bit more of a well thought out design. The base of this mouse is rather wide, so it doesn't tilt at all whilst in use, and there's a few really nice design choices. There's the left side, which is covered with a rubberized grip. Normally I hate rubberized grips, but here you really need it, and you'll see why. You have a thumb groove, and the side buttons are on the top and bottom of the groove, which I think is a really good idea. But I will admit I'm not a heavy side button user, so I can't vouch for their effectiveness whilst playing. When I've used it out of game, I will admit I sometimes struggle finding which one is the back or forward button. On the right side you have a ledge for your hand, main buttons using mechanical switches, and your scroll wheel as well. On top of the mouse you have a DPI button that also doubles up as an AI button. Why? Because if you want to increase the value of your company, just shoehorn AI into your product. Synapse has to be running for this to work, by the way. A use of this, as an example, you could maybe make your own mouse review by stealing someone else's footage, then creating an AI script with ChatGPT. Structurally, this is a unit, with the dimensions of it being around 110mm long, 88mm wide, and 79mm tall. And it weighs a meaty 150 grams. Despite its weight, the ergonomic design is what allows this mouse to stand out, as it's keeping your hand in a natural handshake position.
I want to shake hands. That's all I want to do.
The best way to think of this is when you use a standard mouse, notice how little movement you have when you turn your wrist inwards or anti-clockwise versus clockwise. Your arm is already in a rather strained position. This creates a risk of various gamer-related injuries, which is something that a lot of people don't really think about. Now, I'm going to roleplay as your dad here for a second. First, I love you. Secondly, always go with what's comfortable. There's no magic grip type or shape that will make you play better. I know for a fact that some of you are holding your mice in weird and uncomfortable ways because you've seen someone else do it, or because you think that it will make you play better. It won't. It will likely just cause you a lot of pain later. The dad roleplay is now over. Like and subscribe. So in theory, vertical mice are a lot more ergonomically friendly, as the freedom of movement with your wrist is a lot greater. It's in a natural position, so based on this it means you can play games for longer without pain. I'll go over what playing with this is like next. First, there's a rather glaring flaw, and where the mouse honestly shoots itself in the foot. Well, actually, in the head would be more accurate. This is using Razer's Focus Pro sensor with up to 30,000 dpi, so the same as the Death Adder V3 Pro and Viper V2 Pro. So it's packing heat, and it's what really piqued my interest with the mouse. A high performance sensor possibly means that Razer did want this to be considered as a gaming device. There's a couple of major issues I experienced. First is the sensor location combined with the design. With the GXT mouse, the sensor is located in a position that's a lot closer to your fingers and thumbs, and combined with its design, which brings them closer together as well, it feels like you're pinching the sensor, and so when I immediately started playing with this, it felt natural. But this one has the sensor slightly lowered down and your fingers and thumb are further apart, so it feels like you're aiming with the middle of your fingers and thumb, so you don't feel like you have the same amount of control as the GXT 144 had. You naturally point with the tips of your fingers, not the middle of them, so there was a bit of adjustment needed with the Click V2 Vertical. This doesn't mean that the mouse is useless though, or not suitable for gaming. From my experience, it just means there's a longer adjustment period. But there's a second major issue that I've experienced, and that is the sensor is rotated, and it also made me motion sick. Now I'm not sure why this is, and I'm pretty sure I'm not holding this wrong. I thought I was insane at first, so I watched some other reviews for this, and I saw the Technies review, and he also said that he got motion sickness.
I got motion sick.
And he also mentioned the sensor rotation or it moving at an angle, so this seems to be by design. So with this, when you move the mouse horizontally, you can see that the input is at an angle. So I think what was causing my motion sickness is that I'm expecting it to be completely horizontal movement, like when I'd use a standard mouse. But because it's not, it's making my brain do an owie. The GXT144 does this as well, but only slightly, to the point that I didn't notice it in my original review, and to the point that it doesn't make me motion sick. The Click V2 Vertical though is particularly off-putting with the sensor rotation, so I had to use RAWXL to counter this rotation by quite a bit, and it fixed the issue. And so I started playing with it. I mainly played Deadlock with this and a bit of CS2 Deathmatch and various other games like Battlefield for when I became exhausted with the endless ranked matchmaking grind that modern games seem to shove down your throat. And it went better than expected. However, there is a noticeable impact on very precise movements, and I think this is mainly down to the sensor placement. With the Click V2 Vertical, it felt like the only role my fingers had with this mouse was for support. I realised that a lot of the micro adjustments were actually being controlled by my thumb and the lower parts of my fingers. By applying a bit of pressure in certain areas, I was able to make the smaller adjustments that I needed. However, this was less accurate and responsive than the tips of my fingers. In games with a higher time to kill and less focus on pinpoint accuracy like Deadlock or Battlefield, it was fine. I did have to run a higher sensitivity as throwing around a 150 gram mouse wasn't ideal, and I have some recommendations to make playing with this a bit more comfortable in the next section. Overall, I performed a little bit worse than I would with a standard mouse, but maybe after more practice with constant use, I'd be able to adjust fully. With games like CS2, it was a case of performing notably worse when compared to a standard mouse, because of the amount of reliance on micro adjustments. If my first shot accuracy was off, I'd find that the amount of time needed to make micro adjustments was just too high when compared to normal, and the lack of precise control that would normally be done by my fingers was a notable downside. Obviously, I could use my entire wrist constantly, but the same problem would still apply. I'd still be missing that finer precision offered by my fingertips. As my thumb was also doing a lot of the work when it came to precise movements, and it's a good job that this grip is here by the way to help with that, I also found that my thumb started to feel a bit of strain after playing for a while, but this can also be down to the adjustment time required for using a vertical mouse and could go away after prolonged use. Overall, I am pretty impressed with my experience of playing competitive FPS with this mouse. My recommendation to get the most out of this mouse is to use RAWXL to change the sensor rotation, as well as investing in some better mouse skates. Dot skates would work really well with this, and I'd recommend to use a faster mousepad or use a higher sensitivity. This will help with giving you a greater sense of control over the mouse in general and make micro adjustments a bit easier. It will also reduce the amount of times you'd need to lift the mouse. With its 150 gram weight, picking up the mouse is a bit tiresome for weaker people, which I am not, as evidenced by the comments I got regarding me ripping up a piece of card with a fictional anime girl on it. This mouse costs around $119, which honestly I think is a fair price. This is an incredibly well-made and high-quality product. If you're wanting a vertical gaming mouse, this is a great option to go for. Just be aware of the issues I mentioned and be patient when adjusting to a mouse like this if you're moving from a standard gaming mouse. After using this, I think there's a possibility that vertical mice could be an option for competitive FPS. This has been great to play with, but I'd imagine that competitive FPS wasn't really the ideal use case for this mouse. It might just require a bit of research in really nailing down the sensor placement and maintaining the sensor precise control that's found in a traditional design. I hope to see more vertical mice in the future. Let me know what you think in the comments, and whilst you're here, maybe you should watch the video that's on screen now.